Hi, welcome to class number 2, part 1 for mobile interactive app programming for the 2015 International Summer University. In this video lecture, we will discuss Android, uh, its main characteristics, architecture, and the concept of intents. The main question for this topic is, what is Android? And for most, it's just an operating system. However, is a little more than an operating system, and that's how we say that it's a software stack for that includes the OS, of course, but it includes also middleware and some key applications. And the, and in this case, with the Android SDK, we got all what we need to develop applications for the Android platform, and we use the Java programming language. So just one of the main things is that it's a little more than iOS, or maybe we say more than an operating system. So one of the main characteristics that we need to keep in mind that it has an application framework that it will be very useful for the development of new applications, and we will want some details about this, the uh, virtual machine. And again, all of this will be discussed once we go into the architecture. So it has its own browser and optimized graphics, SQLites for the manipulation of local databases, media support. Of course, it comes with a phone, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, camera, and other characteristics that you can see there. So we just need to be aware of all the resources that we have. Another of the main topics of discussion for today is the Android architecture, which which will be needed to have some basic understanding for those that do the plan on developing Android applications. Um, so so it has the layer for application, the application framework, libraries, and the Linux kernel, and of course the runtime too. So let's go into some of the details about the architecture. So now, just let me make a parenthesis, because then we say, so in this class, are we learning how to develop applications for Android? No, we just go into the basic understanding of Android. Why? Because the mobile web app that we will be implementing in this class, we're going to test it on an Android simple app that will open a web page given a URL, and we're gonna place a web page in that location, the location of the URL. So we just need to have a very basic understanding, and again, we could be testing our um, program or the project that you will develop in any other device. However, we're selecting Android because it's the one that is available in the um, machines that we have there in Australia. So, for example, I don't know if we have equipment for iOS. Maybe they do, but I mean this is easier because the you can develop Android basically in any machine. Okay, so let's go with the applications. So what we know is that, okay, when you get a device that is using the Android platform, you know, that has some already core applications like the email, the calendar, maps, browser, and so on. So these applications, those are examples of some of the apps, and these were written in the programming Java programming language. Now, something that will be very useful is that we also understand that in the architecture we got the application framework. So we go back so we know what we're talking about. So we say here there are some applications. This is part of the architecture. And then we got the application framework. So you can see here talking about the activity manager, the for example, the view systems. I mean, what the user interface, we call those views, and then we want to spend some time with that in the next lecture. Content providers, how is that sometimes we uh, share data in applications, so we have that, and the resource manager. So let's discuss some of those. So again, we have what we call views, and then is um, like for example, we needed that to create applications, and like I said, we need it for the user interface. Like for example, when we talk about text boxes, buttons, or grids, or layouts, and so on. Content providers, I say that so will be the applications will access data from other applications, like the most typical one is your contacts, or sometimes we want to get information about an app. Maybe once is interested on knowing what are your favorites on that you save for your browser. The resource manager is the one that has information about, for example, strings, pictures, and whatever that is not related with code. Um, Notification manager, activity manager. Now there is a lot of details about those. Like I said, we just need to have a very basic understanding. I mean, we could spend just a whole course on going into all the details of these. Like for example, the activity manager. I don't think we uh, going into detail, because when we have multiple activities in an application, I mean, it will be very useful to understand, and also understand the life cycle of an activity, and how each activity will uh, need to access some type of resources. So it's a lot of things that we can discuss, but we just need to have a basic understanding that we have all of that there. Now, we also have some libraries that can be used to um, that developers can also access for the applications. These are some of the examples of the libraries that are there, which gives you, I mean, more power when you are um, creating your apps, right? But in this case, if you're creating a native app, so like a C library, media libraries, and so on. So here are some of the examples that we can have, and then this can give you an idea of what is it that you can do. Now, this can also give you an idea why is that um, maybe when we use the XMTs that we were discussed, maybe those don't have all the way of transforming to access all that you can do when you define a native app, right? So that's something else that should be clear. Now, this is something else that is interesting, that the Android runtime, and one of the main things is that, I mean, each um, Android application is running its own process, and this is another topic that will be interesting by itself, to talk about process, how that they have their own space, how they have the access to their uh, resources, and so on. So uh, we have it in this way, so we can have multiple apps running, and having multiple processes, and and also the memory management, and then how this is being optimized for the minimal memory footprint, and so on. So this is another interesting topic to discuss, and just to have an idea that is there. Now, maybe some people won't even realize that there is also that Android relies on Linux, and, uh, and and basically for the main things for the operating system, like memory management, process management, and so on. Why? So it's something else that will be interesting. Now, once we understand, we have a very basic understanding, or let's say we're just aware of the existence of the architecture and what is it that we have there. When we go into actual developing an Android application, we really need to understand that there are four components: activities, content providers, services, and broadcaster receiver. Most apps that people develop are just contain just activities, which is what the direct interaction between the user and the device. So they see something, so it's something that is visible and there is some interaction there. Now, the content provider is something that has data that may be available for other applications. So in case that your app wants to have some data, and I mean, usually you have some type of a database or information that maybe that has to be available for others, then you have a content provider. So your app may not need that, maybe you don't need it, and they say with a service, you need to do something in the background, then you maybe have a component that is a service, or a broadcast receiver is if you are um, um, you want to act in such a way like when something happens. Like for example, what about if you get a call or a message or somebody unplugs the earphones from the device? Is that something that will concern for your app, or something that you need to know, or will this affect what we call the life cycle or maybe an activity? So again, this is something that may not need it, but we need to understand that when you define an app, it can contain all those four components of it. And in most cases, we just go with an activity. We will have an example developing, and then I will show you the components of. So here in this example, let's suppose that we have an application in which the activity is the user interface for browsing music. So, and again, the activity is something that is visible and then is some interaction with the user. Now, the content provider is maybe you have there some information about the music that you have, and then you want others to access that information. Maybe you have something about your favorite song, or maybe you want to have data about which one is the one that you play more often, or something like that. Now the service is maybe you want in your app something that plays the music and that's in the background, so there is nothing there and you can be interactive with something else. And now the broadcast receiver, in this case, what happens if the headphones are unplugged? So, and so in this case, it will pause the music, and each one of those will have what we call a life cycle, which will be um, also needed when you are developing an application. So this just gives you an idea of if we want to actually develop a native app in Android, that we need to have some understanding about the architecture, about the main components, and about the life cycles. Okay, finally, we need to talk about intents. That just to summarize, these will basically will be actions that will be performed, and then maybe there will be some type of component or data that has to be implemented. And when we're talking about activities, when we actually start an activities, we provide as a parameter to the activities an intent, which is some type of action or something that we want, a task that we want to accomplish. And here is some examples of intents, like for example, here we want to actually launch a URL, or we want to dial the phone, then maybe an activity that needs to be implemented, and then we need to define those intents, and then we need to say this is what I want that to happen. Now, intents can be implicit and explicit, and then implicit is when we actually don't specify the the components in which needs to be implemented. Okay, so this is the end of this tutorial in which we went about a quick overview about the basics of the Android architecture, intents, and the main components of an Android application.